Hey, it's Brian from the Daily AI Show. Welcome to another Saturday Conundrum. And this one was actually inspired by something I got to do with my family last summer. So we'd gone over to see a bit of the Olympics in Paris and then spent a little time in London thereafter. And while we were in London, just before we headed home, we went and saw an ABBA show. Now, this is a ongoing, sort of like you would see in Vegas type show. The only difference is ABBA, all while I believe they're all still alive, they were all holograms on the show. Yet it's a live audience, there's a live band. It's actually really entertaining. I would definitely recommend it to anybody. But that's sort of where this inspiration came from, because this conundrum is called the Infinite Encore Conundrum. And really what it gets down to is how AI is obviously going to play a huge role in bringing back actors that have, actors and actresses that are deceased, or, famous literary authors, or you get the idea. Somebody who's created stuff in the past. Normally they're just gone. You could look at their old material, but now with AI, it's getting easier and easier for these deceased actors, with the permissions of their estate, to show up in new movies. So you might see modern day actors like Ryan Reynolds, acting alongside John Wayne or something like that. But it gets to that idea of there's a finite amount of attention. And so if this starts happening at scale, be it in books, music, movies, and other parts of culture, where does your attention go? Because there's only so much to give. And does that start to squeeze out the new actors and actresses, the new, song makers, the writers, all the above? So this is the conundrum, and then you're going to hear the conversation from our lovely AI hosts after it. And of course, it's also always very meta as the AI hosts talk about AI taking the place of others in entertainment, which is kind of what we're doing right now. So let's listen to the conundrum, and then we'll get into it. So, culture can embrace the infinite encore, a familiar voice releasing new art each year, comforting old fans and teaching new ones why the legend mattered. That choice offers continuity and an economic security for estates and platforms, but it narrows the spotlight for living creators who might redefine art for the next generation. Or culture can force the stream to slow, limiting AI revivals to protect the scarce attention for fresh work. That keeps the artistic ecosystem diverse, but it denies audiences the thrill of a convincing new masterpiece from a voice they loved, and removes the reliable revenue source that funds risky projects in the first place. If you're a reader, listener, or viewer with only so many hours, which path feels like the richer future, and what might you lose by choosing it? If you're a new artist hoping to be seen, or an estate tasked with preserving a legacy, where do you draw the line between homage and overshadowing? There's really no comfortable middle where every release finds an audience. Attention is finite. Which trade-off will we accept? All right, should be a good one. Let's jump into the conversation, guys.
Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're jumping into something pretty mind-bending, really. This idea of the infinite encore.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The thought that AI could just keep creating, new art from artists who are no longer with us.
Exactly, like new songs, new performances.
Yeah.
And we've looked at quite a bit of research on this, and it presents this real dilemma, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Do we embrace this AI continuation, keep these legacies sort of actively going?
Or do we consciously make space, focus our attention on the living creators, the emerging artists?
It's a big question because, our attention, our cultural bandwidth, it's not infinite.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And the sources we have explore both sides of this. What are the benefits? What are the potential downsides?
So the core questions we're kind of wrestling with today are things like, if you've only got so much time, which future feels richer?
Right. And what gets lost in either scenario?
Right.
For the artist's estates, for creators now. Where's that line between an homage and just overshadowing everything new?
That finite attention piece is key.
Okay, so let's start with the case for this infinite encore. The technology itself is pretty central here. What are we talking about, like under the hood?
Well, the AI voice cloning tech is Honestly, it's getting incredibly sophisticated. Companies like Respeecher, 11 Labs,
I've heard of them.
they can analyze existing recordings and create these really convincing synthetic
It
voices.
was more than just a gimmick.
Oh, definitely. Think about Respeecher working with, say, Bev Standing's voice. The potential there is huge, using it for future projects, maybe adapting performances into other languages.
Extending an artist's reach even after they're gone?
Precisely. It turns archives into something active, not just static recordings.
And it's moving beyond just preservation, right? Like the Judy Garland estate working with 11 Labs.
Yes, that's a huge step, creating new audiobooks in her voice.
And Liza Minnelli apparently endorsed it, not just for the sentiment, but also the commercial side, the emotional connection.
Exactly. That signals a shift. It's not just about looking back, it's about generating new cultural products, new experiences.
Which really makes you ask, what does new even mean here?
That's the philosophical wrinkle, isn't it? And there's serious money behind this.
Ah, the economics. Let's talk about that.
The AI voice cloning market is already worth billions. Billions with a B. And the growth projections are steep, like 25% compound annual growth.
Wow. So there's huge demand.
Clearly. And for platforms like streaming services, think about it. Offering AI tracks from artists people already know and love, that's reliable engagement.
Less risky than promoting someone completely unknown.
Right. People recognize the voice, the style. It helps with algorithmic traction. You know how those recommendation engines work.
Okay, but here's a counterintuitive idea from the sources. Could that reliable income actually fund new art?
That's one of the arguments, yes. The idea that the money generated from these established AI-driven encores could subsidize more experimental work by living artists.
So the past potentially bankrolling the future.
Kind of. You see hints of this with models like 11 Labs having these restricted voice databases, selective licensing. The estates could, theoretically, channel profits towards innovation.
It's an interesting loop. And what about democratizing tools for current creators?
That's another big point. AI lowers the barrier to entry. Imagine a young musician, maybe working in their bedroom.
Yeah.
They could experiment with vocal styles or textures that would normally require expensive session singers or complex studio setups.
So using AI for homage, for blending genres, without the huge budget.
Exactly. And we saw examples like Rebind using AI to reinterpret classic literature, making it perhaps more relatable for today's audience, but still compensating the rights holders, opening creative doors.
But with all this power, you need guardrails. Are there ethical frameworks emerging?
There are attempts, definitely. It's crucial. Companies like Synthesia insisting on explicit consent, not using biometric data without permission.
That seems fundamental.
It should be.
Yes.
And Respeecher has this vocal roots AI idea, letting families control the monetization terms.
Giving the estate or family agency.
Yes. Positioning AI more as a collaborative tool, maybe? Like John Legend participating in Google's Dream Track experiment.
So working with living artists, too, not just replicating deceased ones.
That suggests a pathway where AI augments human creativity rather than just replaces or mimics.
Okay, and what about the audience in all this? How do listeners feel?
Well, the sources point to some interesting generational things. A 2024 survey suggested something like 68% of Gen Z discovered classic artists through AI collaborations.
Really? So it'd be a bridge.
Potentially. And on the other side, 73% of older fans apparently value these new releases as like emotional anchors to artists they love.
So it serves different needs for different groups.
It seems so. And platforms are trying to find ways to handle it, like Spotify's Discovery Mode, trying to promote these tracks without maybe overwhelming organic discovery entirely.
A balancing act.
Trying to be. And there's this idea of expanding artistic literacy. Imagine a synthetic Judy Garland narrating Jane Austen. Could that bring Austen to a whole new audience who might not otherwise pick it up?
That's an interesting thought experiment. But with all this replication comes risk, right? Like voice fraud.
Huge risk, and it's happening. But that's also driving innovation in things like watermarking,
Yes.
ways to distinguish authorized AI replicas from, deep fakes or unauthorized uses.
Okay, so that's a strong case for the potential upsides. Preservation, economics, tools, maybe even discovery.
A compelling case for sure.
But then there's the other side, the finite attention counter-argument.
And this is where the concerns really sharpen.
Because, as we said, attention isn't limitless. Space in the cultural conversation is finite.
Exactly. And the worry is if we flood that space with endless AI encores of the past, what happens to the new?
Does it get crowded out? stifled.
That's the fear. If every algorithm, every playlist is pushing synthesized versions of already famous artists, where does the genuinely novel sound break through?
And algorithms are key here, aren't they? The source mentioned that Utrecht University study.
Right, showing bias in recommendations, how collaborative filtering can disadvantage novelty, how non-mainstream genres often get pushed down.
And AI could make that worse.
Well, the argument is yes, because the AI training data often reflects past commercial success. Combine that with platform incentives to promote what's already popular.
You get an echo chamber.
Potentially. One prediction mentioned was that nearly 60% of algorithmically promoted tracks could be AI homages by 2028.
60%. That's huge. What does that do to new artists trying to get heard?
It raises serious questions about discoverability, and the economic impact is a major concern.
Tell me about that.
The sources cite figures like indie filmmakers reporting, I think, 40% fewer funding opportunities. Debut authors facing 33% longer waits for deals.
And is the suggestion that this is linked to the focus shifting towards AI-enhanced franchises or these authorized replicas?
That's the potential connection being drawn, yes. That the focus on leveraging existing known IP via AI might be diverting resources or attention from nurturing brand new talent.
Even those ethical frameworks we mentioned, like these exclusive deals, could they backfire?
Well, the concern is they might centralize cultural capital even more. If only the biggest estates can strike these lucrative deals, it could make it harder for mid-level or independent creators to compete or gain visibility.
And then there's the authenticity question. It feels murky.
Very murky, especially legally. In the US, copyright over vocal timbre specifically is, well, it's kind of a void.
Great.
Meaning unauthorized AI replicas can appear, and platforms might profit, without clear legal recourse for the original artist or their estate. Remember that AI Tupac verse that popped up?
Yeah, I do. That caused a stir.
It highlights the gap, and living artists are feeling it. That ICMP survey showed, 44% of musicians reporting income loss from AI covers?
44%, that's substantial.
And 61% worried about their genres becoming diluted. It's a direct threat to livelihoods and artistic identity. You have to ask, who's really benefiting here? Is it the original artist's legacy or primarily the tech platforms and maybe a few large estates?
And beyond individual artists, what about culture more broadly? The risk of homogenization.
A very serious risk highlighted in the research. If AI models are trained primarily on commercially successful, often Western, music,
They just reproduce those patterns.
overwhelmingly so. One analysis found 89% of AI tracks stuck to Western harmonic structures. Think about what gets lost.
Diversity.
Richness.
Exactly. The concept of digital colonialism comes up where musical traditions from other parts of the world, maybe Urdu ghazals or Maori Haka chants, get further marginalized because they're underrepresented in the training data.
Erasing cultural heritage through code, that's a chilling thought.
It really is. Which brings us to the opportunity cost of nostalgia.
Okay, what does that mean? It means every minute, every bit of bandwidth, every recommendation slot given to an AI Encore is one not given to a living artist trying to emerge.
The trade-off.
Yes! That Stanford simulation was striking, predicting a 52% drop in debut artist discovery if just 30% of streaming is dedicated to legacy AI content.
52%. That's crippling for new music.
And if platforms are driven purely by engagement metrics, clicks, shares, and if synthetic voices, for whatever reason, currently generate more clicks.
Which one source suggested they do, right? Like 3.2 times more.
If that holds true, it creates a perverse incentive against promoting human innovation, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Wow. And the psychological impact on creators today.
Also significant. The sources mentioned interviews, musicians feeling pressured to make music that sounds, well, AI optimized.
Conforming to the algorithm's perceived taste.
Right. And feeling less motivated to experiment, to push boundaries if the system seems rigged towards familiarity.
Yeah.
Around 78% felt pressure to conform. 63% felt less motivated to experiment.
That feels like the opposite of what art should be about.
You could argue that. And think about the nature of AI versus human creativity. An AI Encore is essentially frozen, based on past data.
Right.
A living artist evolves. Imagine a hypothetical AI David Bowie track in 2030. It might sound like him, but it's based on his 70s or 80s work.
Whereas a living artist influenced by Bowie might fuse that with, I don't know, hyperpop or drill music in 2030. Something totally unexpected.
Exactly. That potential for genuine, unpredictable evolution is what might get lost if we focus too much on replicating the past, however skillfully. What future breakthroughs are we missing?
So we circle back to this core tension, this pull between stewardship, honoring these incredible legacies,
Which is a powerful and understandable desire.
versus the absolute necessity of fostering a dynamic present,
Huh.
making sure new voices can actually be heard and thrive.
It feels like a real crossroads. The decisions being made now by platforms, by estates, by us as listeners, they feel incredibly consequential for the future shape of culture.
And the research makes it clear there's no easy off switch for the tech. The AI voice cloning market is projected to be massive, like $25.6 billion. It's not going away.
Definitely not. But at the same time, the evidence of algorithmic bias, the potential harm to living creators, the risk of cultural stagnation, that's real too. You can't just dismiss it.
Neither side fully cancels the other out.
Not at all, which means this isn't just about technology. It forces us to ask a really fundamental question about culture itself.
Which is?
Is culture fundamentally a museum we curate, carefully preserving the past? Or is it more like a frontier, something constantly being explored and expanded?
A museum or a frontier.
Yeah.
That's a powerful way to frame it.
And there's no simple algorithm that can answer that for us.
No. So maybe the final thought for everyone listening is to reflect on that personally. When you engage with music, with art, with stories, what are you seeking?
What do you value most? Is it the comfort of the familiar, the excitement of the new, some blend of both?
Because in this new landscape of, as we said, infinite possibilities but finite attention, your choices, our choices as consumers, they actually matter. They send signals.
They help shape which direction we head in, what kind of cultural future we collectively decide to build.
Something to really think about.
Yeah.